Tonight at 10, a last-ditch attempt to save thousands of people trapped in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. The port city is still under heavy bombardment as the Russians intensify their attacks in the wider region of the Donbass. A guarantee of safe passage for Ukrainians is the condition for an exchange of Russian prisoners of war as the people of Mariupol try to flee to safety.
We need a break after the shelling, after this whole nightmare. We've been hiding in basements for 30 days.
All this while the Russians show off a new intercontinental ballistic missile capable of carrying nuclear warheads. We'll have the latest on the conflict and on Germany's decision to stop importing Russian oil by the end of the year. Also tonight. 4 days to polling day in France and a tough televised debate between the two candidates for the presidency. In a Virginia courtroom, the actor Johnny Depp says he felt driven to drugs and alcohol because of clashes with his then-partner Amber Heard. And Prince Harry tells American television that he wants to make sure the Queen is protected and surrounded by the right people.
And coming up in sport on the BBC News Channel, can Manchester City get the win they need to go back to the top of the Premier League?
Good evening. In his latest initiative to save the lives of thousands of people trapped in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol, President Zelensky has offered to exchange Russian prisoners of war for a guarantee of safe passage for his fellow citizens. The port city of Mariupol is still under heavy bombardment as the Russians intensify their attacks on the wider regions of the Donbass. It's believed that 100,000 people remain trapped there. Now, controlling the Donbass would allow the Russians then to extend the areas that they annexed back in 2014. Now, the Azovstal Steelworks, a massive industrial plant in Mariupol, has become the last centre of Ukrainian resistance in that area. Our correspondent Mark Lowen has the latest.
In the fog of war, Russia's ferocious firepower is unrelenting. Mariupol, once a thriving port city, besieged and broken. The last bastion of Ukraine's resistance is the Azovstal steel plant, perhaps a few thousand soldiers and civilians in its bunkers and tunnels. A patch of land holding out against one of the world's biggest armies. And now a rare voice from inside the nightmare.
This is our appeal to the world. It could be the last of our lives. We are probably facing our final days, if not hours. The enemy is outnumbering us 10 to 1.
But again today, they refused Russia's latest surrender deadline. And again, an attempt at a humanitarian corridor failed. Ukraine's president said he's offered Moscow an exchange of Russian prisoners of war for safe passage out of Mariupol.
We are ready for different formats of exchanging our people for the Russian people, the Russian military they left behind. They both left corpses scattered and abandoned wounded people.
Across the country in Kiev, it's all quiet on the Western Front. So from a volunteer centre, they send supplies to the east, first aid, food and preparations for battle to those repelling the Russian assault. Among the staff is Olena Nikolina, whose cousin Max is one of the last fighters in the steel plant.
The pride of Russian army here.
They've gathered spoils of war from an invasion that's not gone Moscow's way.
This badge says that death is better than dishonor.
Olena hopes her cousin will return with more fragments of Russian losses.
Do you feel proud of him?
Yeah, totally. I would have never imagined my cousin to become a true hero of Ukraine and hero of Mariupol. There's obviously a very bitter sense of pride, in a sense that he is in life-threatening situation, but I am very proud of him. I dream of the day when he will return and we will be able to meet again and I will be able to tell this to him.
If you could give a message to Max right now, what would you say?
Max, I know that you are very strong and your family loves you a lot and we are waiting for you and we are sure that you will come back and you will be our hero, and you will have a great life in the free Ukraine after our victory.
Praying for that end are families across this nation, those like Vladimir Vasilyuk, whose only child, Danilo, is also fighting in the steel plant. Here in Kiev, they've fortified their monuments, but Vladimir knows he can't protect what's most precious to him.
It's very hard there. They are running out of ammunition, but they don't want to surrender because they can't abandon the civilians they're protecting. I used to prepare him for the army, so maybe it's my fault he joined. I'm pretty sure I'll see him again, but until then, I want to say, Danilo, I love you, and I'm waiting for you.
500 miles from the front line, the emotional distance can seem further still. With the agony of helplessness comes the hope and dread of news. Mark Lowen, BBC News, Kiev.
Well, earlier today, the Russians released images of what they say was a successful test flight of a new intercontinental ballistic missile capable of carrying nuclear warheads. President Putin said it would make anyone seeking to threaten Russia think twice. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, is in Moscow. Steve, can we talk about the timing and the significance of this latest Russian display?
Yes, well, think of this as a not so subtle hint from the Kremlin. Basically, Russia is saying to the West, look, we have this very big, very powerful, very destructive new weapon. Keep that in mind when you're dealing with us. So what do we know about this weapon? Well, the Sarmat missile, or Satan II, as it's known in the West, has been in development for some time. So no big surprise then. Plus the Pentagon said today that it had been notified ahead of the launch. It didn't see it as a threat. But the fact remains that the fact this launch took place at a time when hostilities are going on in Ukraine, that sends a clear message, I think, to Russia's opponents. And Vladimir Putin made that clear today. He said that this missile would provide food for thought for those who, in the heat of frenzied, aggressive rhetoric, try to threaten Russia. Threaten Russia. This from a president who sent his troops into Ukraine, who is attacking Ukraine. Vladimir Putin still trying to create this alternative reality, turning everything upside down, making out that it's Russia that's under threat from Ukraine, from NATO, from Britain, from America, and making out that he's acting in self-defense.
Steve, many thanks again for the latest there in Moscow. Steve Rosenberg, our Russia editor. Germany has now said it will stop importing oil from Russia by the end of the year to make the impact of sanctions more effective. Currently, around a quarter of the oil Germany uses comes from Russia. The German finance minister has admitted that stopping all Russian oil imports now would hurt Germany more than Russia. He also blamed Moscow for global price rises and the international food crisis. He's been talking with our economics editor, Faisal Islam.
Just after the invasion of Ukraine, the Western world clubbed together to isolate Russia, its financial system, its biggest businessmen, and its war chest of hundreds of billions in currency reserves as never before. But it wasn't enough to deter the aggression. Absolutely key to this is the role of Germany, heavily dependent on Russian gas and effective source of hundreds of millions of euros being sent to the Kremlin's companies every day. Its finance minister, Christian Lindner, told the BBC Russia is responsible for the significant economic consequences of the war.
There is an unprovoked, terrible war in Ukraine, and Russia is responsible for all geopolitical and macroeconomical risks which have their origin in this war.
So Russia is responsible for food crisis, for example?
For example, inflation, food crisis, and the possible risk of a serious debt crisis in developing countries.
At first, the stringent actions against Moscow hit home, collapsing the value of its companies and of its currency, the ruble, to record lows. But now, thanks to the flow of energy dollars and euros, it has recovered all of that lost value. When you hear from President Zelensky last week that Europe's sending $1 billion a day to Russia for its oil and gas, and that we don't understand how you can make money out of blood. And he pointed the finger directly at Germany and Hungary for blocking an oil embargo.
No, we are not blocking. We are willing to stop all energy imports from Russia. It's just a matter of time.
Well, when? For the oil embargo?
As fast as possible.
This year?
We are, as fast as possible.
So it would cause a physical shutdown of your manufacturing sector, your car makers, if you were to push the button right now?
Probably. And this is why we prefer sanctions which hurt him more than us as Europeans and our single market.
At the IMF meeting today, finance ministers and central bankers, including the Bank of England's Andrew Bailey, walked out when the Russians intervened at a key G20 summit.
Excellencies, get ready.
But it is the relationship between Germany and Russia that's absolutely key to the calculations of the Kremlin over this war. The minister admits this was a 2-decade miscalculation, and Germany is now committed to independence from Putin. But, they say, doing so immediately is just not possible. Faisal Islam, BBC News in Washington.
The All England Lawn Tennis Club has banned players from Russia and Belarus from taking part in this year's Wimbledon Championships in the light of events in Ukraine. Moscow has responded by saying it's unacceptable to turn athletes into what it describes as hostages of political prejudice. Our sports correspondent Joe Wilson has the story.
At Wimbledon, there is no roof to exclude the wider world. This is a fixture in the international sporting calendar. Thus, what happens here matters everywhere. Wimbledon quotes its responsibility to limit Russia's global influence in the light of unjustified and unprecedented military aggression. And so several of the world's leading players will be excluded here and from other forthcoming UK tournaments, even though they will continue to play elsewhere on the professional tours. Daniil Medvedev, ranked 2 in the world, a strong contender for the men's title, won't play. Arina Sabalenka, a potential champion, one of several leading women's players from Belarus and Russia, is now barred. The Kremlin says the action is unacceptable and the tournament will suffer. Well, from one of Ukraine's leading tennis voices, a different perspective.
Is another sign for Russia that they are wrong. They have to stop, and we're thankful for this. We're thankful for all the help, for the weapons we get to survive and keep fighting.
But there's some strong opposition in tennis. The ATP, which runs the men's tour, said the unilateral decision by Wimbledon and the Lawn Tennis Association to exclude players from Russia and Belarus is unfair and has the potential to set a damaging precedent for the game. The International Olympic Committee has urged sporting federations worldwide to exclude competitors from Russia and Belarus. In some sports, they've continued to compete as neutrals. At Wimbledon, they've decided that neutrality is not an option. Joe Wilson, BBC News in southwest London.
The Prime Minister has rejected a Labour demand to apologise to the Archbishop of Canterbury over comments that Mr Johnson reportedly made in a private meeting of Conservative MPs last night. Mr Johnson was widely reported as saying that senior clergy had been less vociferous in their condemnation of Vladimir Putin than they had of the UK's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The Prime Minister said the Rwanda policy was an attempt to save lives in the English Channel. Our Deputy Political Editor Vicky reports.
A bit more fines coming, Prime Minister.
Boris Johnson is desperate to change the subject and talk about anything other than his COVID law-breaking. A row with the Archbishop of Canterbury is one way of doing it.
Happy Easter to all of you.
In his Easter sermon, Justin Welby criticised government plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. In a private meeting with Conservative MPs, Mr Johnson reportedly criticised the Archbishop for being less vociferous in his condemnation of Russian President Vladimir Putin than of government immigration policy. Today, the Labour leader demanded an apology.
In fact, the Archbishop called Putin's war an act of great evil, and the Church of England has led the way in providing refuge to those fleeing. Would the Prime Minister like to take this opportunity to apologise for slandering the Archbishop and the Church of England?
The Prime Minister didn't repeat what he'd said behind closed doors, but
I was slightly taken aback for the government to be criticised over the policy that we have devised to end the deaths at sea in the Channel as a result of cruel criminal gangs. I was surprised that we were attacked for that.
Lambeth Palace has hit back, saying the Archbishops of Canterbury and York had condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine as an act of great evil and spoken out repeatedly against it. It added they are gravely concerned by proposals to send migrants overseas. Downing Street insists voters care more about policy than parties, but the SNP don't think the Prime Minister will be forgiven.
82% of people in Scotland said they believe the Prime Minister lied to this Parliament and to the public about his law-breaking COVID parties. Are they right, or should they not believe their lying eyes?
We are going to get on with the job of delivering for the people of the whole of the United Kingdom.
For now, Mr Johnson can leave it all behind. He's off to India on a trip which he says will concentrate on jobs, defence and energy security.
Well, let's join Vicky live now at Westminster. You mentioned the trip to India there, Vicky, but what about other developments to do with whether the Prime Minister should be investigated by Parliament or by a committee to what's been going on?
Yeah, and this is accusations that he has misled Parliament about what was going on in Downing Street, so-called Partygate. Labour think that he should be investigated straight away. They're forcing a vote on it tomorrow. Now, the government, with a huge majority, could have expected to be able to block that. But many Conservative MPs simply thought that that would look bad. If the Prime Minister's done nothing wrong, then why not let the inquiry go ahead? Now, Downing Street has come up with what it thinks is a compromise to keep its own MPs on side, and that compromise is to delay a decision until after the police have finished their investigation and after the senior civil servant Sue Gray has published her report too. Now, what does this tell us? I think it does tell us about how unhappy many Conservative MPs are. I spoke to lots of them today. They're simply reluctant to go out at the moment and really defend the Prime Minister. I think Downing Street crossing their fingers, hoping after all those other investigations, the appetite for another one might simply fade away. They can't be sure of that, of course. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister right now is mid-air on his way to India. He's been talking to reporters, our colleagues there, and he says politicians should stop talking about themselves and talk about the things that matter. He's also said that he will lead the party into the next election. That ultimately, though, of course, is a decision for his own MPs.
Vicky, many thanks for the latest there at Westminster. Vicky Young. In 4 days' time, the voters of France will choose their next president. And it's proving to be a rather bruising contest between the current head of state, Emmanuel Macron, and Marine Le Pen, representing the party known as the National Rally, formerly the National Front. This evening, the two candidates have been facing each other in their only nationwide televised debate, and millions of voters are said to be still undecided. Our Paris correspondent, Lucy Williamson, has been watching the exchanges.
After weeks of sparring from a distance, tonight it's hand-to-hand combat. The first time in this election that Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen have fought face-to-face.
Bonsoir, Marine Le Pen. Bonsoir.
With just 2 campaigning days left and a quarter of voters saying the debate will shape their decision, they've been waiting for this.
La présidente du régalien.
First up, the big one, rising prices and spending power, Ms Le Pen's favourite subject.
Rendre leur argent aux Français.
Her slogan tonight, give the people their money back.
Qui sont impliqués d'ailleurs ensuite dans la guerre.
Mr Macron lectures her on why her economic plans won't work.
Vous parlez à votre banquier quand vous parlez de la Russie.
And then goes for the jugular, her relationship with Russia.
Parce que vous dépendez du pouvoir russe et que vous dépendez de Monsieur Poutine.
You're dependent on Vladimir Putin, he says. When you speak to Russia, you speak to your banker. But what do voters make of it? Across the country in Reims this evening, voters from all sides, many still undecided, were watching the drama unfold.
We see a very different debate from 2017. It appears that Marine Le Pen is much more well prepared than in 2017. She's very calm. She decided to not attack frontally the President Emmanuel Macron. And from my point of view, Emmanuel Macron seems a bit unstable.
So far, it's a very balanced debate.
I'm biased, but the arguments are good and they may change my mind.
She's much better than last time, but she's still too weak in comparison with Macron. He's far stronger on every subject.
Marine Le Pen's job tonight was to show that she was prepared for power. Mr. Macron's task was to show that she was not, without looking too arrogant and superior himself. Around 10 points separate them in the polls tonight. 4 days separates one of them from power. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Paris. Well, the debate is still going on here in France tonight, and there's a sense that Marine Le Pen has done a bit better than she did last time around. Back then she really suffered from being seen to be both hostile and unprepared. This time she seemed calmer, she seemed more across her brief, and it was Mr. Macron who at times seemed to be taking her on more aggressively. He is pulling ahead in the polls here, but of course the race is much closer this time around, and this debate matters all the more so because there are more voters now who say they're finding it really hard to choose between the two of them.
Lucy, many thanks for the latest there in Paris tonight. Lucy Williamson on the presidential debate. Now, in Virginia, the actor Johnny Depp has told a court that he felt driven to turn to drugs and alcohol because of constant clashes with his then-partner, the actress Amber Heard. Mr. Depp is suing her for defamation after an article in which she called herself a victim of domestic violence. He denies any abuse. He said in court that Ms. Heard had a need for conflict. Our correspondent David Silito has been following the case.
All right, you're ready for the jury? Yes. Okay.
Johnny Depp back on the witness stand for questions about a relationship that he says was controlling and belittling. As he settled down, there was only the briefest glance across the court towards where his ex-wife, Amber Heard, was watching.
I was sort of not allowed to be right, not allowed to have a voice. So at a certain point, when what enters your mind is you start to slowly realize that you are in a relationship with your mother.
Day one was all about the big picture. His childhood, his lifestyle, his personality, his drug use. Day two is focused rather more on the specific allegations.
He was asked if he had ever assaulted Ms. Heard. He said no. Rather, he was the one who was punched and beaten, at one point acting out what he said happened during an argument.
She squared off at me in the doorway of our bedroom. And I said, what do you want to do? Hit me again? Would you like to hit me again? And I said, go ahead, hit me. Bam.
The court was shown photographs, one from an incident which left him with a severed finger, caused, he says, by a bottle that was thrown at him. Another of an injury to his face. The court was then played a recording of one of their conversations.
You didn't get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not deck you. I was hitting you. I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are you tough?
What am I supposed to do? Do this? I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are. That's the difference between me and you. You're a baby.
This was, he says, typical. Him retreating, trying to escape from a relationship that he said had become demeaning, aggressive, violent. Throughout it all, his ex-wife watched. We'll hear Amber Heard's version of events in the days to come. David Silito, BBC News, Fairfax, Virginia.
Officials in the US state of New Mexico have fined a film production company more than $130,000 following the fatal shooting of a cinematographer. The actor Alec Baldwin was holding the gun when it went off on the film set. Our correspondent Sophie Long is in Los Angeles with the latest.
Well, Huw, Helena Hutchins' death really rocked Hollywood and left many people here demanding to know how a young mother and one of the industry's rising stars could have been shot dead on a film set. There are clear industry safety protocols to stop anything like this ever happening. Well, today's report revealed that not only did the production company know that those protocols were not being followed, it also failed to do anything about it, and the maximum penalty was imposed. But that is far from the end of the matter. The criminal investigation is ongoing and criminal charges have not been ruled out. And multiple lawsuits have been filed, including an unlawful death lawsuit on behalf of Helena Hutchins' husband, which alleges reckless behaviour and cost-cutting were to blame for her death. Well, in response to that, Alec Baldwin's lawyer said any statement that he was reckless is entirely false, and that he was relying on the statement the gun was cold, meaning that there was no possibility it would discharge. Well, Huw, not only was Alec Baldwin the man holding the gun, he was also one of the film's producers, and that could be key in determining whether ultimately he will be held personally responsible for her death.
All right, Sophie, many thanks for the latest there on that case. Sophie Long in Los Angeles for us. A few of the day's other stories. A head teacher of a school in East London where a 15-year-old black pupil was strip-searched is leaving due to health reasons. The schoolgirl, known as Child Q, was subjected to the search without an appropriate adult after she was wrongly accused of carrying cannabis. A safeguarding review found that racism was likely to have been a factor in the case. A murder investigation is underway after 3 bodies were found at a house in a village in Buckinghamshire. A man and a woman in their 60s, a man in his 50s as well, were found dead in Bourne End yesterday. Thames Valley Police said all 3 were known to each other and they're not looking for anyone else in connection with the deaths. A study has shown that insect populations have fallen by about half in some parts of the world because of climate change and intensive agriculture. Researchers at University College London said that the combined pressure of global heating and farming was driving a substantial decline in the number of insects across the globe. Prince Harry says he doesn't know yet if he'll return to the UK in June for the celebrations to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. In an interview with the American network NBC, the Duke of Sussex also spoke about visiting his grandmother, the Queen, at Windsor last week and said he was trying to make sure that Her Majesty was protected and surrounded by the right people. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell has the story.
His relations with the rest of the royal family have been strained of late, but Harry has remained on good terms with his grandmother, the Queen. The two hadn't met for a year, until last week when Harry and Meghan were en route to the Netherlands for the Invictus Games. They broke their journey to visit the Queen at Windsor Castle, and according to Harry, the meeting went well.
It was just so nice to see her. You know, she's on great form. We have a really special relationship. We talk about things that she can't talk about with anybody else. She's always got a great sense of humour with me, and I'm just making sure that she's, you know, protected and got the right people around her.
Harry's comment that the Queen was on great form is reassuring, given the concerns about her health. But quite what he meant by suggesting he's the person ensuring the Queen is protected and has the right people around her is unclear. On his own future plans, Harry seems very settled in California.
Home for me now is you know, for the time being, it's in the States. And it feels that way as well.
But did he think he would come to Britain to attend the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June?
I don't know yet. There's lots of things with security issues and everything else. So this is what I'm trying to do, trying to make it possible that, you know, I can get my kids to meet her.
A question about his relations with his father and brother was deflected.
Do you miss your brother, your dad?
Look, I mean, for me, at the moment, I'm here focused on these guys and these families and giving everything I can, 120% to them, to make sure that they have the experience of a lifetime. That's my focus here. And then when I leave here, I get back and my focus is my family, who I miss massively.
You do.
Finally, how much did he feel his mother's presence in his life?
It's constant. It has been over the last 2 years, more so than ever before. It's almost as though she's done her bit with my brother, and now she's very much like helping me. Got him set up, now she's helping me set up. That's what it feels like, you know.
The Queen, pictured here in a new photograph to mark her 96th birthday tomorrow, will doubtless be pleased that her personal contact with Harry has been resumed. Members of her family, though, may be somewhat bemused by Harry's apparent assumption about his role as her protector.
Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
And that's it. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.